Tonight on the docket, welcome to a special edition of Freedom Watch, where we attempt to answer the question on everyone's mind who likes to watch this show. Do we still have a Constitution? More than 200 years ago, our founding fathers wrote and ratified a document to acknowledge and protect our natural rights and to establish and to limit the federal government. Fast forward to today, and that sacred document, the Constitution, has been rendered toothless as the federal government assaults the core of this text on a daily basis, essentially erasing the historic struggle leading up to the creation of a manuscript which secures our natural human rights. The government passes laws that restrict your freedom of speech, laws that restrict your freedom to earn a living, even laws that compel you to purchase products that you might not want. The government conducts raids without search warrants, seizes private property for private use, and the president deploys United States military forces into combat without a word from Congress, and even kills without due process. As the Constitution's primacy shrinks, the government grows, and personal liberty goes away. So what can be done? Restoring the Constitution's primacy will require the federal government to shrink. And there's no one who understands that better than my next guest, who as a lawyer and as a lawmaker has special insight on how this nation can return to its limited government roots. He's a man who upholds, reveres, and wholly abides by the Constitution and understands that the government is obliged to remain within its confines. Here now, Utah's Republican Senator Mike Lee. Senator Lee, welcome to this special edition of Freedom Watch.
Thank you.
All right, so the president starts a war without authorization from the Congress. The Patriot Act lets federal agents write their own search warrants without having to go to a judge. The Agriculture Department thinks it can impose a tax on its own without a vote from the Congress. Do we still have a Constitution?
We still have a Constitution, but as you point out in your book, Judge, the one that just came out, sometimes constitutional provisions are overlooked, and in some instances government power is abused in precisely the same fashion that our founding fathers sought to protect against. And so the best solution to that sometimes is found with the voters. On occasion we can rely on the courts to come in and say you can't do this, but you can't rely on the courts every time, because sometimes they get it wrong too. That's where the voters come in. That's why voters have to have this conversation with each other, with their family members, with their co-workers, and they need to express their opinions about the Constitution and the extent of it at the ballot box.
You are not only a United States Senator, you are a prominent lawyer from a prominent family of lawyers, and you saw something that most lawyers would kill to see. You saw the inner workings of the Supreme Court of the United States of America when you were a law clerk to a justice there. Are you confident that in the hands of black-robed, life-tenured judges, we can repose this great document for safekeeping? Are you confident that your fellow members of Congress understand that it is reposed in their hands as well?
I'm not at all confident that my colleagues in Congress are as satisfied as I think they ought to be that a substantial amount of the power under the Constitution resides in Congress, nor am I convinced that as many of my colleagues as ought to within Congress are convinced that the limitations on government power will be rendered, or maybe rendered a virtual nullity if we're constantly looking to the court to tell us what we can get away with. We need to be our own restraint on our own power rather than waiting to see how far the courts will allow us to extend that power. That's really how we avoid tyranny.
Are you at all disillusioned? Because there are very few members of Congress who agree with what you just said. Most members of Congress are only limited by what they think they can get away with politically. Some of them even openly boast, as Congressman Jim Clyburn did to me here on Fox, that most of what they do is not authorized by the Constitution. They do what they think the folks at home want, and then they let judges worry about whether or not it's constitutional. That's really perverse, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely it is, and a lot of them will be that open about it. That's exactly why when someone asked Nancy Pelosi about 2 years ago where Congress gets its authority to impose an individual health insurance mandate on the American people, she responded indignantly by asking the questioner, are you serious? And before she stormed off. So this really is a problem. But fortunately, Judge, this is a problem that is finding its solution in the people.
All right.
I'm finding now more than ever at any point in my life that the American voter is becoming more and more aware of these issues all the time. And they're making it a matter of careful study and consideration when they decide for whom they will vote.
You have great faith in the voters, Senator Lee, but of course the voters can only weigh in every 2 years. What do we do about a president who thinks he can kill an American without due process of law because he feels that he and his advisors have evidence of the person's guilt and evidence of the person's dangerous propensity? What do we do with a president who thinks he can start a war in Libya while the Congress is on spring break, and when it comes back, it acts like a potted plant? Stated differently, do the guarantees in the Constitution mean anything if the executive or the legislative branches will run roughshod on them or even disregard them?
Well, many of these protections will end up meaning nothing if the coordinate branches of government do nothing, especially if everyone in Congress does nothing in response to those things. That's why it's important, for example, when the president gets us involved in what I consider a war in Libya, there were a number of us who ran resolutions and made countless public statements condemning that as an excess of the president's commander-in-chief power. We need this discussion to occur so that the following election, the next election, can be informed by that debate and discussion. There are, of course, remedies, extraordinary remedies, that can be invoked if a president engages in conduct that rises to the level of high crimes and misdemeanors. Impeachment charges can be brought up. I don't think we are there, but that can happen as well. My point is, there are opportunities to check government power in all three branches of government, but in order for those things to work, you have to have people in power, in office, in all three branches of government who take seriously their oath to the Constitution.
Got it.
And who take it seriously enough that they will restrain their own power, even if the courts won't do it for them.
It's almost inhuman to restrain your own power, and we like to see when that happens. Senator Lee, thanks for joining us on Freedom Watch.
Thank you.